So with that, I'll call the meeting to order 5:31, May 13th, FinCom meeting with Mike Therian, Jim Purdy, Carrie Jelsma, all present, and myself, Alex Began. And with that, let's get started. Chris, thanks for sending out the agenda earlier in revenue update. As has been the case for the past 5 or 6 weeks, general budget discussion is definitely in order in light of everything going on. So we'll open up in a minute for updates on revenue and any FY 2021 updates as well. Chris, do you want to start with that revenue sheet?
Yeah, either that or Jackie was here and we have some budget articles and schedule if you want to go over that first. Your call, whatever you prefer.
That's fine. That's fine. Jackie, take it away.
Okay.
Good evening. Thanks, Chris. I'm just going to quickly share my screen for the FinCom. So as folks know, last night the Board of Selectmen updated the timeline, and they did note that we're going to be hosting our town election on June 25th. And we currently have our town meeting date scheduled for June 20th. So I just wanted to provide folks with an updated timeline for ATM and ATE deadlines. And I will be emailing this to you, but I wanted to give you a first glance of how busy the next couple of weeks will be. Chris and I will be presenting on Tuesday night at the Selectmen's meeting about the process and the consequences and kind of particulars of going forth with a 1/12 budget if for whatever reason we are unable to complete town meeting on June 20th. But at this point, this is the schedule to maintain a June 20th town meeting. And I had a couple of action points for the FinCom on this. So from what we're hearing from the clerk's listserv that Diane Bucco is a part of, is that we're going to be able to have the warrant hearing for a town meeting on Zoom. So based on our usual way of doing things, that would be for a June 20th Saturday town meeting, we would have a warrant hearing on Zoom on June 15th. So I just wanted to particularly note that for FinCom members. I also wanted to note that we will need to choose a date in June for a budget forum or two over Zoom. We had talked about doing them on Zoom way back in March, which feels a little bit like a lifetime ago. But now that we're kind of circling back in on completing an abridged version of town meeting, I wanted to put having some budget forums back on the FinCom's radar so that we can start to advertise those to the public. I would presume sometime in June, probably during those first 2 weeks. And what I can do is when I send this schedule out, I can give some availability on when the town Zoom account is available and when HWCAM would be available for it to run live. And then the FinCom can start to make some planning decisions about the schedule. Does anyone have any questions about the schedule before I switch gears?
Can you send that out, Jackie?
Will do, yes. We just finished this today with the Selectmen making their decision last night, so it'll be going out to the Selectmen and the FinCom probably by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I have a comment / question. So I watched some of the BOS meeting from yesterday, and it sounded like there was more skepticism maybe than this conversation has regarding meeting the deadline for annual town meeting. I got the impression it's more likely it would be postponed.
So Kira, I think that the challenge is that we don't know. So the governor's obviously released his, let me step back for a second, I'm sorry. So let me switch and put on more of my public health permitting hat in terms of the timeline. So the governor has released information about the 4 different phases of what opening up looks like, but hasn't really given us a lot of what the fine print of what next week is going to look like and the following weeks and the following weeks. So Chris and I are working to prepare a 1/12 budget in the circumstance for July that a town meeting is not feasible. But we are also working on all of the details and logistics for having a very safe town meeting for if we do have a town meeting, because there are disadvantages and advantages of having town meeting. and there are disadvantages and advantages of having a 1/12 budget. So we're preparing for both scenarios right now, because we're not sure which one is going to be the one that moves forward. That's going to be definitely on the Board of Selectmen's agenda for Tuesday this coming week. But regardless of which way we go, we do need to plan for both until there's a final decision on which one we're doing. So, and at minimum, we have to complete our town election by June 30th. So I think scheduling the Zoom budget forums is a potentially good idea, because the ballot questions, if we're just doing a postponed election and not doing a town meeting as part of it, then all of the original ballot questions will remain on the ballot. Whereas if we're reopening the warrant and amending the town meeting based on a financial articles only warrant and a subsequently relevant amendment to the ballot, then there's more work to do about like getting people prepared to vote at town meeting and at the ballot. But at minimum, we would want to have a budget forum so that folks have the awareness of what's going on with the ballot questions without a town meeting, because those ballot votes would still have some ramifications even without a town meeting until months later.
So if we do have a town meeting, let's say we do have a town meeting, Jackie, would it just be financial warrant articles on that town meeting? If for example, we had it in the end of June?
Correct, and that's actually a really solid segue into the other brief presentation that we have for tonight. So we did look at all of the financial priorities of the different articles, and without any amendments from the schools at this point, this is what we would be looking at for a town meeting that would be an abridged town meeting. We should be getting some feedback soon about the citizens petition being able to be transitioned to another meeting. But so even without that, we would still have these first 11 articles, and they should look hopefully familiar with the levy limit budget, the use of free cash to balance budget, operating overrides for the town and schools, school and town debt authorizations and exclusions, and then our consent agenda of a couple of annual financial cemetery articles, a water reserve transfer, and Chapter 90 acceptance, and then the CEPA appropriations. Without any of these financial articles, it would be hard to move forward. These are the ones that we have prioritized for a sooner town meeting than the fall, whether it's so that we can continue to do accept the state money to do road work, or to pay the town hall debt bill, or to authorize so they can start going through the procurement process for the fire truck. These were the priority articles, so that we could exist on July 1 with a town meeting appropriation.
Alex, just on
Go ahead, Jim.
on the school override. So, actually, Jackie, Chris, Alex, on the school override, that number probably is going to change from what's in the existing ballot. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, I don't think we know yet. I think there's the potential for it to change. But I think we need an update from the schools on where they will land with their budget, and they're engaging in that process. They've got a couple of, they've had some some groundbreaking info recently delivered by at the state level with respect to aid, obviously, that we talked a little bit about, and then I think they're over the next, we were invited to a meeting earlier today for tomorrow, and then another upcoming meeting as well, to join, perhaps as, if not active participants, able to attend and view and see and hear the school committee discuss any possible changes.
So just one operation questions for the folks that are mailing in their ballots or already have mailed in their ballots, particularly for the school override. With that, how would that get, if the number changes? How does that get managed, Jackie? Or
Jim, that's a great question, and I did discuss it with Diane Bucco already, because we knew it would come up, and it was something that we talked about in our ATM and ATE planning meeting today as well.
yeah.
So Diane has sent some of the ballots out already, but what would still stand if the ballot questions were to change is the requests for absentee ballots. So she knows everyone that's requested absentee ballots, and not all of them have been sent out yet. So in the circumstance that the ballot questions were to change, she would still honor those requests for absentee ballots she's already received, which I think she's in the triple digits on now. And she would, for those people that she's already sent ballots to, she would send new ballots to and let them know that that ballot was no longer valid. But she has that list of requests, so it would be definitely some paperwork shuffling for the clerk's office, but it would still be a manageable process if we had to do that. And that's where, if we were to change ballot questions, we would have to do so very soon, because we still have to meet that 35 days before the date of the election deadline for ballot questions.
Right.
If we have to do it, it would be manageable, but we won't know until the schools have further discussion.
Sorry I'm late. I was on another call actually with Senator Warren, hosted a call today, so I was trying to advocate for money that could be usable for cities and towns instead of what we're getting. What have I missed so far? As I know we're on town meeting, and we don't right now have a date set for town meeting. I know that Hamilton has their date set for the 20th and 25th. And I spoke to the town manager over there today. I know that their FinCom didn't really want that date, but Joe tells me that he thinks that they're going to be going forward regardless, because it was unanimous from the Board of Selectmen. So right now, the only thing that we do know as far as the town meeting, because the Board of Selectmen hasn't voted on that date yet. So we're just clearly, just preparing for a 1/12 budget to talk about on Tuesday night, preparing to talk about an FY21 budget, both of those for Monday night, but no date has been set for town meeting.
Anthony, what I just was going over is if we were going to go with the 20th, what the timeline would look like, as well as what, that we would be presenting more formally on the 1/12 budget at Tuesday's Selectmen's meeting. So we talked briefly about this timeline and about scheduling a budget forum for early
in the event that and honestly, and I don't know if we're going to have that answer on Tuesday night. We're just going to understand what the governor is going to do as far as lifting some restrictions, which it was not very definitive today, and he's really not tipping his hand. And I know there's a lot of pressure, but there's still work to be done on this and determining the date. So it's great that we have a timeline. I know that we're looking at it, but it's still premature to be, until the Board of Selectmen have had that opportunity to set the town meeting. We are doing some due diligence behind the backgrounds. We're looking at some facilities. I know that Hamilton is going to use the football field. We went out there too to look at the football field. Mass General Law right now does not allow us to go outside the boundaries of Wenham. So there is a pending legislation which would allow us to do that if we so choose. So that that just hasn't passed yet. Hopefully it does. That also allows the Board of Selectmen to reduce the quorum. Currently we're at 120. The quorum could go down to as much as 10%. I don't think that the selectmen would probably do 10%. But some other number could be considered. And if you do adopt that, then you can only take financial articles up. Everything else has to be pushed to a town meeting in the fall. Zoning articles and all those other non-financial articles. So, we still have some work to do, but I think that what I really have Chris and Jackie doing is preparing to that 1/12, which we have to submit and should submit regardless, even if town meeting was June 1st. You still should submit that, because you never know if something's going to happen. We have to make sure for continuity of operations that we have the DOR's approval on the 1/12. So that's the two routes we're going in, and the goal is, like I told the selectmen on Tuesday night, that we're going to present that on Tuesday. That's our goal. And hopefully we're on track. We had a meeting today and we'll have another budget meeting tomorrow. And we're gonna wrap these all up and see what we can discuss on Tuesday. So if you want to do a save the date type of thing, but you know,
that's where I'm getting a little confused. Like, as to, is the town committed to a June 20th or not? I mean, I can totally appreciate.
We have not
that
committed. They've not
Okay.
committed. They've not voted on it, so it's not committal at this point.
Okay. I mean, I know the date's been out there with the obvious kind of caveat that it's subject to the ability to meet publicly in a group gathering setting, which is something that we've obviously not done for a couple months now. And the
Right.
likelihood of being able to do so in the next few weeks is very low. I forget if it was May 18th was the initial reconsideration date for
That's right.
gradually lifting
It
restrictions.
is.
And everyone, I share the skepticism that by June 20th would be able to do something. I guess what I was asking is, so sounds like from a policy direction standpoint, the pursuing of a 1/12 strategy, and by that I mean getting the exact numbers and then starting to delve into the implications of 1/12 of FY20. And I'd love it if maybe Jackie and or Chris, you could give a quick update on that in a minute, but figuring out what that means to deal with a 1/12 come July 1st, assuming there's a reasonable likelihood. But separate from that, I didn't know if on Tuesday, Anthony, you expect a yay, nay on June 20th. Again, subject to those other things.
I really don't know. You know, it's like everything else with this pandemic. We just don't know. You know, what is the governor's orders going to look like? What's the phases going to look like?
Yeah, again, but setting aside those big unknowns, are we committed to one or not? Because I'm not going to sign us up for a budget forum if we're not even committed to one otherwise.
Then I wouldn't sign you up for a budget forum then right now until the selectmen have set the date and do that then.
The other thing about, sorry.
Go ahead, Carrie. No, it's fine. Go ahead.
The thing about signing up for a budget forward, if you just forum or the warrant hearing, if you backward map from June 20th or 20th, yeah, to now, you know, we need to have the school budget and our budget and things figured out within the next 2 weeks.
Right. So we got invitations for the school budget for tomorrow night. I think you've already got that. And then they're going to have their public hearing on the 20th. So I'm assuming that they'll take a vote on what that will be that night. So it's the most I know with that.
Sorry about my dogs barking in the background. Also, there is a post on Facebook that on Wenham Town Clerk that says it's 20th and 25th. And it doesn't read to me like it's tentative. So I don't know.
Wenham Town Clerk?
Yeah.
Well, the official social media account of the town of Wenham is not the town clerk's website or social media.
But it's posted on different, you know, Wenham Hamilton Facebook pages. So just to not generate confusion, I'm just throwing that out there in case, or I can email Diane, maybe we should put tentative, or I can comment, this is tentative.
Gary, so it was voted, the selectmen did not vote it as the official town meeting date. I think the issue is that was the official save the date that they used. So I think that's where we're trying to get a sense of the timeline if we were to proceed with that. And so it is a tentative save the date, but it's not an official, they did not vote to officially do it on that day, but they said, if we're going to do it in June, this is the day that we would do it. So we obviously want people to not fill up their calendar. I don't think anyone's going out of town anytime soon, but so I think that's the issue is that, you know, in order to preserve the date and to give us some kind of thought process of when we could potentially the earliest we would do it. So it is tentative, but they didn't vote for it to, they voted on it, but not officially.
No, they never voted on it. They never voted on the 20th and 25th. When both joint boards of selectmen met, it was clearly just identified two dates as dates where we can shoot for, but it was never voted on.
But it was a consensus of a save the date. So that's where the confusion lies.
I think it's going to be a convoluted, confusing process anyway. So I'm happy to double back with Diane, but I think maybe we should just say tentative in some of these Facebook posts that several thousand people see.
Again, that's the town clerks, and we'll pass that information on too, and yeah, we'll pass that on as well.
Okay.
Important to have one message that comes out from the town, and that's why when I first started, and I wanted an official town of Wenham social media post that's all due respect, the town clerk's an elected position, and I just felt that the town needed to have a a social media account that wasn't connected with an elected official. That's why we have our own Twitter, Facebook, Instagram accounts. So the message that we want to get out should be always funneled through the towns.
Yeah, and I'm not criticizing the Facebook posts in general. I think the town clerk posts in general are really informative and helpful. I just think it's going to be it already is a confusing process for this year's budget. So I'm just flagging it, is what you said, Anthony, is trying to have it maybe a little bit clearer and a little more consistent that it is tentative.
So, all right, so lots of unknowns as to how things are going to unfold over the coming weeks, couple months. We don't know what date we're even striving for town meeting, which is understandable. It might be in the fall. We're very likely going to be dealing with the 1/12th, which is why next week, right, next Tuesday, that's to be presented at the Board of Selectmen meeting. That's correct?
It's on the agenda. It will be on the agenda for Tuesday.
For Tuesday,
Yes,
okay.
I've been working on it today, and I will have it finished up by tomorrow to go over it. Anthony, Jack, and I have a budget meeting for tomorrow afternoon, so I'll have it all finished up by before our meeting tomorrow for us to go over and review it. If not
So
sooner.
I think what will be helpful for FinCom and in working with Chris and Jackie is to firm up what our kind of interim milestone should be with regard to if we are striving for any review of the town budget, for example, we should likely be doing that in conjunction with the select board. So if we need to get a joint meeting on the calendar, I'm firmly in support of that. And I guess the status of the warrant is it's closed, but it can be reopened. Is that correct? Is that kind of what I'm hearing? So yep. I'm not trying to get in the way of that process. I know that the select board and town officials can deal with all the necessary steps to reopen it, to change the articles to those that are pertinent to the budget, slim that down. That all makes sense. I do have some concerns over the voting on of ballots of override amounts that may change, of course. And I know we've talked about that a bit, and I think council was consulted to figure out what that meant with respect to authorization of amounts that may potentially decrease given the financial circumstances. I don't know the answer to that, but that type of information will definitely be needed as we work with the BOS to consider any changes. One question I have for, I guess, Anthony, if you happen to know, or if anyone else happens to know, the agenda for the school committee meeting tomorrow, we did get the invite today. I just reviewed it now. It doesn't really speak to the purpose other than kind of stating that there's a loss of revenue and show solidarity and collaboration. Does anyone know what the expectation for tomorrow's meeting is?
I really don't.
Okay.
I'm hoping that we hear something about their plans for FY21.
Okay. So we'll be on the receiving end of information there. I just didn't know if we were expected to be delivering any news to them. And I did ask the school committee chair for just a few minutes ago, just wrote back and said, thanks for the invite. And if there's an agenda to share.
I did pass on this afternoon to Julie that what we think that we're going to have for revenue loss and what's the intent of the school. Are they going to go to just what they're going to factor in for a loss in state aid, or are they going to consider the towns as well? And she didn't have an answer for that or direction on that one yet. That didn't know was what I got for an answer. So we'll have to see what they
Sure.
come up with.
Sure. So if I can just share a couple of numbers, following on the discussion last week, the legislative roundtable, I just brought up the school committee's adopted budget from February that had been forwarded around, of course, and was curious about the dollar amounts for Chapter 70, the transportation and circuit breaker, and if you know they're on the front page or second page, you don't have to go very far for them. So for FY21 budgeted, those total 5.35 million and make up 14% of their gross operating budget. I was just curious, you know, how much of their budget is it? I knew it was meaningful, 14% of their gross expenditures. And if you took a 20% decline of those, which I don't think is, I don't really think is reasonable, to be honest with you. I think that the numbers that were thrown out, that 20% that was offered as a potential reduction in aid was done so as a ballpark, and very willingly, I might add, by Brad Hill and Bruce Tarr, which is great. But usually when you get an expectation for a decrease that easily, it's an optimistic kind of at best, and I don't fault them for this. I'm appreciative that they did offer something up, but they also alluded to bigger cuts in prior recessions, this being way worse than those in many regards. And Vinny, at the end of the call, clarified, asked the question, which is great that he did, because I could just jump back to the end of the call, 30% for transportation, 40% for circuit breaker. So if you factor all of those cuts in, which I think is a little bit more realistic, quite frankly, you could be seeing $1.6 million reduction in state aid off of their FY20 budget, because Vinny asked the question, is that relative to, like, what should we base those numbers off of? And I think it was Bruce Tarr, it might have been Brad Hill, but I think it was Bruce Tarr who said off of what you got last year, as in FY20. So any budgeted increases, right, are expectations that are obviously out the window. And it's not that the state would be suggesting any decline off of what you've budgeted for 21, which factors in an increase of, you know, between 3 and 8% thereabouts, but off of your FY20. So that's a bigger hit in terms of your FY21. The gross expenditures were up 9.57%, which we all know. I wouldn't be surprised if you factored these in and went dollar for dollar cut with a 20, 30, 40% cut. I mean, it cuts it in half basically, from a 9.5% increase to a 4.25% increase. I can share these numbers. They're just simple estimates given those reductions. So yeah, so it'll be interesting to hear. And obviously the town can't pick up the slack. It'd be nice if we could, if we had all the levy capacity in the world to be able to say, don't worry about it. But that's not the situation we're in. So for those who can attend tomorrow, I have to look at my situation. I'm not sure that I can, but I'm going to try to. And we should have the agenda forwarded to all of us as well. Anything else on the schools that anyone has information or wants to share?
Just a question, Alex, just so I'm clear. So you're saying the potential is for a $1.6 million reduction on Chapter 70 transportation and the circuit breaker. That 1.6 million would be reduced from their FY20 existing budget. Yes? Yeah,
actually, Jim, it's about $1.25 million. Basically, what I did is 20% off Chapter 70, which is their biggie, right? In FY20, they budgeted, you know, almost 3.7 million. 20% off that, 30% off their transportation, which for FY20 was about 385,000, and 40% off their circuit breaker of that's what they said, of 945,000. So you get a sum total. You get, you know, reductions of, again, and who knows, Jim, if these even come to fruition, right? You know, 730,000 for Chapter 70, reduction of 115,000 for transportation, reduction of 378,000 for circuit breaker. Sum total one and a quarter. Let's just call it 1.225.
So that
$1.25 million.
And that's why they're using a 1.3 number that they've been saying that they need to reduce.
That 1.25 then is from FY20. If you added to that, I'm just trying to figure this, what they were requesting from the two towns in terms of an override, that puts them from where we had defined on the ballot the override for the two communities plus the minus 1.6, they're in the hole about $3 million, right? Am I off on that, or are my assumptions wrong?
Well, let's see, we're 360 on our side, 720 on theirs. So 2 by the 720 is about 2.1 million. What'd you say? And add another million to that, about 3 million? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you hold absolutely, Jim. If you hold gross expenditures constant and
Yeah.
you assume your revenues to be in the red relative to 20 of $1.3 million.
Yeah.
Anthony, that's what you said? They're kicking that number around?
1.3.
Okay,
Yeah,
so yeah, so I wasn't
right.
too far off. So yeah, then yes. And so all we're really doing here in this kind of not entirely pointless exercise is to say, like, what's the revenue reduction? And then the question is, what do you do about it, right? Do you change your budget expectations? Then you follow the assessment, and it would just be the line item could theoretically remain the same, or you could increase it. You could increase the joint assessment and split according to the apportionment to make up for the loss in revenue. That seems like it would be a bit egregious to say we're shifting a larger assessment to the member communities in light of reduced revenue. My thought would be you'd reduce expenditures in light of the reduced revenue, but I don't know their approach.
Yeah.
Or a mix of the two.
My takeaway from watching the school committee meeting the other night, where they were talking generally about what the implications were. It was my sense was I got a little mixed kind of a review of some at least one or two members were saying, well, this points to what we need and we need more of it. Whereas in one or other two other members were saying that's not realistic and the towns aren't able to come up with the dollars. So it'll be interesting to see what in fact they come up with at the end of the day.
Thanks, Jim. Yep, agreed. Okay, should we transition to town revenue? Chris, do you want to walk us through the update? It looks like the numbers are coming in pretty solid with respect to percentage of expected revenues being received,
pull
collected.
it up. Yep, I'm just trying to find it on my screen here. Move on. There we go. All right.
Oh, you got it. Okay, I was going to say I could share for you.
Yeah. So these numbers, they're slightly different from what I went over on the Board of Selectmen last night. Went in and there was some more revenue got posted because the one on the Board of Selectmen was based on last Thursday. So we've had a little bit more come in backdated from the mail going back to 4:30. So they're a little bit slightly, just because I saw Catherine on here, so they're a little bit slightly different. So we are looking at here our revenue for real estate. We're actually in better shape than we were in 19. That 15,733 is 94.25% of our estimated real estate revenue. And at this time last year, we were only at 91.29% for real estate. Personal property, we're a little bit higher as well, where that brings us to about 99%, and we were at 92% last year. So a little bit better there. And then the motor vehicle, the current year is in line with last year. We're seeing a big difference from the collections from 19 to 20, but that was from a lot of prior year. In 19, we received a lot of 2018 motor vehicle revenue, so delinquent payments, and we haven't received we received about 70,000 less of our FY19 revenue. So our motor vehicle 20 revenue is in line. It just looks a little bit different from some prior year old delinquents that people are catching up on. So at the end of the day, we're actually right in line where we were in last year. So our revenue collections are still coming in. Our real estate's coming in. We're at 94.25 right now. So I feel it's very easily we're going to get to that 90, at least 97, 98% like prior years, because we still have, since we pushed back our late fees, so we're not charging any demand or late fees through May 31st. So I think some people may not have paid yet. So I think we still have the possibility to get right up to where we were, where we have been in prior years with that. We have received their assessments from Hamilton. We got those on 5/6. So those revenue numbers will be updated on the next time around when we, on the next week's spreadsheet. So if we added in them right now, we'd be at, almost 95% of revenue collected. So I think for our revenue side this year, we are still in good shape. We're going to meet our expectations and have, enough revenue to cover our expenses for the remainder of the year.
Chris, what about from a cash flow standpoint, cash accounts?
Cash accounts, yes.
How are we kind of tracking?
I can throw that up as well. Give me 1 second. I'll switch my screens.
Great.
So right now we're just till I pull it up, we'll still be I still have us in the positive, and it's very conservative right now on my estimates. Okay, so it shows only a net position of a positive 16,000, but that's only taking into effect 97% revenue collected, and that would only bring in, also with our motor vehicle revenue, that's a very conservative. That will bring us to 700. That extra 70,000 will bring us to about 700,000 in motor vehicle revenue, and we still have another. We just sent out a commitment on April 24th, and then we still have another commitment going out that will be about another 60,000 in 2 weeks, about in the May 20th week. So I think that 70,000 is very conservative, and we should be seeing more than that. Also with the local receipts, estimating the 250,000, that brings us up to our local receipt estimate of about 2.5 million, where we got local receipts last year of almost 2.9 million. So that's another very conservative. So I think the expenses are right in line. Our salaries, that's 5 remaining payrolls. And we have 5 remaining warrants, AP warrants with invoices, and then 2 more school payments. So I think that 16,000 is in the positive, but I think there's a lot of potential that's going to be a lot better in the upcoming weeks when by probably the end of May, when we see the actual real estate revenue come in.
That doesn't even factor in the stuff that has to be reclassified out of here too, right?
Yes, sorry, yes. And this also has all our COVID expenses included in the general fund, which will be moved out to a special revenue fund that we just got the approval letter on last week for.
This is a general fund balance of 16,000, or
general fund in water.
In water, and then
just our budgeted.
With reserves remaining at 250.
Yes. No, this doesn't factor in any reserves. This is just straight expenses to revenue.
Reserve fund. What's reserve fund balance roughly?
Talking stabilization, Alex?
No, well, we like 250 is our reserve fund, right?
That's what we don't use from the free cash and carry forward is 250.
Yeah, 250, and then but we've had transfers out of it during the year.
We've had transfer out of 125 out of it during the year. The 250s, no.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Are you talking the reserve fund that we budget 125,000?
125. Yeah.
For the reserve fund, and so we have
ambulance, Patriot, AXA, Patriot, and then that What else? Veterans, is it the three things?
Yeah.
Patriot was the software, right?
Yeah, 50,
Software.
60.
Oh, and then
maybe
the
70.
we had the ambulance.
Ambulance, so that's 50.
And then we had the veterans expense for
That's 4.
2,000,
Yeah,
and then we
okay.
had Patriot Properties for 9,000. So we have
61. So we got halfway there. We got halfway
we
in.
64,465 remaining in the reserve fund.
125. Why am I thinking 250 if we keep in reserves?
That's our free cash that we reserved 250 of our free cash.
Oh, that's what it is. Yeah, just as unused, but not
Unused.
technically in reserves.
Yes.
Right. Thank you. FinCom, feel free to jump in and correct me on big numbers like that I should know. All right. Seems like from a revenue standpoint, we're okay. What's the timing of the school expenses? You said we had 2 more, Chris, I thought.
I just put I just paid the one school the May payment on. I did an AP warrant on Tuesday, so
Yeah.
this was done for the Thursday. So we have we'll have one school payment left as of now because that was on Tuesday's warrant.
Okay. So from your standpoint, from the cash flow, you're not terribly concerned at the moment.
No, I know. Like I said, I went very conservative on all of the revenue estimates. So I'd rather have it, look a little bit blink with the 16,000 right now, but it's super conservative. And I think that number is just gonna increase in the coming weeks as we see more and more revenue come in.
I did have one question. Is that the line, row 7, local receipts 250, is that Hamilton?
No, I have the row 9. I include
that's 9, yeah.
the assessment. So local receipts, that's additional. That will be like our water, our iron rail rentals, our permit fees. So it's pretty much all our local receipts we budget except the motor vehicle, our assessments. So permits, fees, water, iron rail rentals, ambulance revenue. Those are the big ones that will be included in the estimated local receipts.
Does that include the fire calls for Gordon College?
Yes, and that's included in there as well. Yes.
Is that still about 25,000? Did you say?
Yep, that's still what the fire they're still expecting. Last time I talked with Captain Baxter over there, he was estimating around 25,000. Deputy, sorry.
Okay. Any other questions on this analysis?
Good work. Good tracking.
Thank you.
of this.
Yep. No, thank you for providing and keeping it. I mean, obviously, this has been a weekly review of it essentially, and I think that's important given the time of the year, fiscal timing, as well as everything going on.
Yeah. It definitely, I think it's definitely worthwhile for sure.
Okay.
We have a, kind of a time frame. We have a sense of FY20. We're not terribly dependent on state aid. Our revenues look pretty good. And it seems like the big question mark is the school district to determine how much the town budget is going to change. Is that an accurate?
For 20?
Well, no, for FY21. So our FY20 looks pretty good. And to the extent that 20 affects 21, either in real time or projecting, I guess I'm just thinking big picture, coming to a number for the town. Are we honing in on a number for the town? But in my mind, it seems like the big question mark is the school.
Absolutely. You're
How many-
absolutely right.
Are there any, it doesn't seem like there's many question marks left regarding the town. We're pretty on track with what a lot of our estimates were.
Pretty much. Yep.
Or FY21 proposed budget. Obviously, actuals next year could come in lower than expected, as we've discussed in prior meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Carrie, I definitely agree with you, and I'd add to that it seems like from the review that we've done over the past few weeks and the discussions that we've had, changes that might come about to FY21 operating budget, given the fiscal pressures, are not necessary. They're not known yet. There might be some, but we had already put together a tight budget. There's no doubt. So we've already made, and with Chris and Jackie and Anthony's help, we've already made some changes with regard to things like funding of Pleasant Pond. There's ongoing discussions as to if this kind of lockdown, I think, continues, do we pursue potential temporary reductions? But those get very complicated because you're looking at maybe a special town meeting in the fall to kind of course correct, I think, in some ways. As it relates to, so we're setting the town budget and we've got a line item from the schools. Obviously, that's the biggie that we need to hear about if there are any changes on their side. It does raise the question, though, of if we still have 2 overrides, or if we had 1 override, for example, from the schools, what have we done to the town budget to accommodate that? You know, if we were to cut our override out altogether, and to what extent is there in the current environment a willingness of you know, among residents to support overrides on both fronts? So I think
To cut our override out completely, just so everybody is crystal clear, is drastic essential services cuts. Because if we presented a level services budget, and you know, we try to make up $361,000, we're talking drastic level services. So this is one of the things that I was expressing with when we were talking about the library, you know, because when you're talking about cuts, there's certain things that are almost untouchable, and the library being one, because you only factor in 1/3 of the savings. So if we said to that department, for instance, we want a $50,000 savings off your budget, well, that equates to $150,000 savings that they need to come up with, which is 15% of their budget, 10%, 15%. So I fully expect that what we're going to end up producing, unless we get different direction, is still some sort of override on the town.
And even if we were to cut to the bone, for example, and not have a town override,
Still going to have a school override.
you're going to have a school override regardless, which
Mhm.
is likely to be funded, and at what cost? We've furthered the imbalance between the funding of the school and town needs at that point. If we were to deprive the town of essential services to such an extent that would be required to get rid of an override altogether, are the schools kind of following suit? Are they reducing their budget dramatically, so as to ease the financial pressure on the member communities? And if not, then I think we've kind of shifted the focus without giving the voters the opportunity to expressly kind of contemplate both, right? To consider both and be in support of one or both or neither.
Yeah, I've asked that exact question of the schools, Alec. Are you going to go deeper than the 1.3? Are you going to recognize the revenue loss that Hamilton and Wenham are facing? And again, I guess we'll know tomorrow, or at least hopefully tomorrow.
Yeah, so that's the big question, really, is what's going to happen to this item that's over half of our budget, and how will that kind of factor in along with, and we already knew that we, with 2 separate override articles, had a difficult situation. It only puts us in, I think, a more difficult situation if we try and offset at this point any anticipated pressures from the schools in light of, like, assuming they weren't to change it, but hopefully they'll reduce significantly in light of the drastic cuts to state aid. And I do think, just to reiterate, that those suggestions were, while welcome, because it's better than having a number, is certainly better than nothing. We're optimistic at best, and I think that was clear. Any other comments or questions? from the public as well? Chief, good to see you. Okay, we can get to the exciting minutes approval then, which is next up if our budget discussion is in a good place to move on from now. There were three, let me grab the dates here from my Word
It
app.
should be 4/8, 4/16, and 4/29, I believe.
Yep, that's what I've got. Thank you, Chris. Okay, I move that FinCom approve the minutes for meetings on the dates April 8th, April 16th, and May 6th, 2020.
Second the motion.
Thank you, Carrie. Any questions or comments or issues with them? I've got no substantive
Very
comments.
small typos that I can share with Catherine.
Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you.
I had no questions. They look fine to me, Alex.
Great. Jim, Mike, you good?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Okay. So if no other discussion, we'll go to a vote. All in favor? Aye, Alex.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Jim.
Terrific. Thank you. Thanks, Catherine. We have a meeting scheduled for next week as well, right? We were Wednesday weekly through May, so we've got the 20th on there still, right, Chris?
No.
Jackie? Okay.
Correct. And we could potentially be a joint with the BOS as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think, I mean, no one's going anywhere, right? We're all available. No excuses.
Yeah, haven't been decided, haven't even talked to the chairman about that, but we'll let you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as
The 20th
Just
is,
potential.
the 20th is that budget hearing. I don't know when. It's scheduled for 7. Okay, so you should be fine if you want to jump on that.
sorry, Anthony, which budget hearing? Schools?
School committee, yeah.
Oh.
I'm just looking at their calendar, so it says the 20th at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, that's right. So tomorrow's meeting we're
Is it
invited to, as well as the 20th, and that's a
Yeah.
public budget. So, sorry, I'm asking questions of which I know you don't have the answers, and that's unfair. But maybe they're explaining tomorrow how they're walking through their budget process, and then publicly, in a public forum again on the 20th, present that.
I think you're correct, Alex, in that I recall from their discussion, the superintendent and the assistant superintendent for business were going to get to the committee in 2 weeks what their proposal was. So
Got
that
it.
would bring us, a week from tomorrow.
So their agenda is posted online. It says on the new business FY21 budget reductions.
Is that for tomorrow? Anthony?
Yeah, that's for tomorrow, yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
And then they have committee reports from the Capital Finance Planning Subcommittee. That's a negotiation subcommittee, policy subcommittee. So two big things there. Budget reductions and hearing from the Capital Finance Planning Subcommittee. I did ask Julie if they would consider holding off on their capital items until the fall, but she mentioned back that that's when they normally would do the work, is in the summer. So if they do it in the fall, they'd have to really be planning it for next summer.
Anthony?
Yeah.
Do you know if, I suspect, I'm sure this is happening, but that the new superintendent has been kept in the loop routinely as to where the two towns are and the budget is?
Yes, my understanding is Julie's been briefing her all along and keeping her in loop.
Okay,
Of
good.
what everything's going on.
I'm not sure if anyone's comfortable discussing this in a meeting, but a couple of my esteemed Fin compadres' terms are expiring soon. And I don't know if people are planning on redoing their term, or if you're finished or what. But anyway, I just want to put that on the radar screen of what the makeup of FinCom is going to be.
Can I jump on that one too? I'm sorry. So last night at the Board of Selectmen's meeting, we brought up the boards and committees because they all expire June 30th for the purpose of continuity, again, the continuity of operations, that the board extend them all until September 1st. With the exception that there's, I think Mike Darian and who else from FinCom is up? Is it just Mike or is it two people? But anyways, Alex,
Mike and Dave.
Mike and Dave.
Mike and Dave. So Alex, on that situation, it becomes the chairman of the FinCom, chairman of the Board of Selectmen, and the moderator. So considering we have 2 out of the 3, I think that if we just maybe post the meeting for you, Jack, and really just you and Jack, and to extend Mike maybe through the same time as all the other boards and committees, so we can get through this until we have a town meeting.
Mhm. Yes, that's my question. Our scheduling is off.
Yep, scheduling's off a bit, but it sounds like you've already kind of kicked up that topic. So I'll connect with Jack and with you. And so what Anthony was referring to is appointments committee for those, for FinCom in particular. All other appointments in town are made by select board.
That's right.
FinCom
That's right.
includes.
So Mike, we just want you to hang around for a little longer. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for volunteering, Mike.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks, Carrie. Thanks, Mike.
To clarify too, that does apply to Dave Molitano as well.
Yes,
Yep.
that's right.
I have Jim Purdy and Mike Therian is ending in 2020, and everyone else is later.
I thought it was David.
I have a list. Let me see.
I have David is 2022, me is 2021. and Alex-
My 3-year term is up at the end of June.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for your service for the next 3 years as well.
Alex, actually, on a more serious note, I do want to have a discussion with you about that.
Okay. We'll reconvene off Zoom. How about that? All right. Any other topics for this evening? If none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
I'm sorry, I make
All
a
in favor?
motion for the FinCom to adjourn.
Thanks, Mike. I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alex, thank you.
Jim.